All right. Hello, everybody. Thank you so much for joining this live stream. This is the first time I've done one of these, so this is a really exciting project for me to bring a new type of content to my channel. But even more exciting are the guests that are with me. I have with me members of the Lawrence graduate Bayreuth Tuben Quintet, which is probably the world's only professional Wagner tuba ensemble. And I also have composer Elliot Goldkind here, who wrote one of the tracks on their new upcoming album, Do You See, Do You Not See? So today what we are going to do is we are going to have a conversation about the music that is on this album, the mission of a Wagner Tuba Quintet. We're going to talk about a whole bunch of interesting topics because these are some super interesting people, great colleagues, great horn players, and really interesting project that they have working on. So I hope you enjoy it. And before we begin, I'm going to go ahead and allow everybody to introduce themselves, starting with you, Lydia.
Hello, thank you so much for having us, Scott. My name is Lydia Van Driel. My official title is I'm the professor of horn at the University of Oregon, and I'm also a founding member of this illustrious Wagner tuba ensemble.
Great. Elliot, would you like to introduce yourself?
Sure. Hi, everyone. My name is Elliot Goldkind. I composed one of the tracks for the aforementioned excellent group. I'm very excited. I've heard the recording. It is amazing. And Scott, thank you for doing this. And to all of you, thank you for having me.
Great. Excellent. Leander.
Hey everybody, I'm Leander Starr, and I've been a member of this group since 2020, I believe, and I was responsible for making a couple of the arrangements on the upcoming album. Happy to be here.
Excellent. Maddie.
Hi everyone, I'm Maddie Tarantelli. I've been in the LGBT Quintet since 2023. I've also served as president, and I'm very excited to share this recording with you all.
Excellent. And of course, Francis.
Hi everyone, Frances Pinkham. I'm based in Eugene, Oregon, play with the symphony here. I have been with the LGBT Tubens since I believe 2023 as well, and I've played on this recording.
Wonderful. Excellent. So we're going to start with listening to some music, which I think is a great way to start any listening party, of course. And we're going to start with the title track of the album. So I'm going to go ahead and make sure that everybody can hear it. And this is Tim Dasso's, right? Is his name?
Dasso.
I'm so sorry. Tim Dasso's tuba. Tube. There's an E at the end there. Excellent. What a beautiful way to start that chorale, this album. It's such an amazing chorale. But I love that piece. I love the way it uses the Wagner tuba. But for my audience that's just joining, it kind of begs the question a little bit. What was that sound? What was that instrument?
Yeah. Well, I happen to have a Wagner tuba here. I have a few of them in my office. Wagner tubas are instruments that we French.
Yeah, this Wagner tuba, for everybody chiming in here, is quite an odd instrument that horn players have to play often. This instrument was invented specifically, for music by Wagner. It was invented for the ring cycle, as far as I remember. And it's such a strange thing to imagine that somebody had to create a sound in their head and then have it realized by an engineer. And so that's why the instrument is named after him. There's other instruments too that do this, like the bass trumpet, I think was also premiered in Götterdammerung as well. So, but that does come with a pretty, like every time you hear a Wagner tuba or use a Wagner tuba, you're now invoking Wagner himself as a part of this. So what I would love to talk about with you is you have this instrument, the Wagner tuba. You're all horn players, I think, originally, and you've now come to play the Wagner tuba. But how does that become an ensemble of Wagner tuba players? How does that become a group of people? And since you have this group, what do they do?
Yeah, that's a great question. So back in 2019, my friend and colleague Ann Ellsworth, who is the horn professor at Lawrence Conservatory, called me up, and we had known each other from the early.
So this is I'll give away the game a little bit about what's going on here. We are dealing with some university Wi-Fi. So as much as we love our university our universities that are supporting this, there's a little bit of connection issues with Lydia at the University of Oregon. But that's okay. We're doing great. So you started, like, the Lawrence graduate part is because Ann Ellsworth was the professor at Lawrence, and sort of created this ensemble. And then where did it sort of go from there?
Yeah, well, she came up with the idea, and it clearly is an acronym for LGBTQ people, and she wanted to create an ensemble that was overtly inclusive and overtly allowed for LGBTQ identified people to be fully present on stage. And I thought it was a great idea, and we got in touch with some friends, and we decided to create an ensemble that was fluid. So we're a quintet of 6 or more people, and the only thing about the quintet is that you have to either identify as, know, or wish to know someone who is LGBTQ identified. So the idea is inclusivity, everyone belongs, and we chose this Wagner tuba to be sort of the metaphor for being the awkward part of the orchestra, as sometimes people.
Yeah, I think I was gonna interject in here and say that, like, it is truly, like, amazing to think about inclusivity in this way of, like, not necessarily like, does your identity marker, like, allow you into this club, so to speak, but it's even as simple as the desire to want to know more about this identity, or having interacted with it that allows you to be a part of it. We were talking yesterday about, like, the idea of tolerance, and the idea of inclusivity is really that as long as you're kind of, like, in the game, you're here to learn and be respectful and be respected. You have a place in this group, and then by the way that we perform music, this group has a place on stage. Like, you allow these people that are maybe not heard as often, or not heard as confidently in their identity, they now have a position on stage to perform. But that, of course, you're using the instrument to do this, because the Wagner tuba itself is an odd instrument that is not exact. We talked about it yesterday. I think the way I described it was, it's an instrument that's not really done being invented, right? We just kind of stopped at one point, and we created this instrument that's out of tune, awkward to play, awkward to hold even. And it's a very, very strange instrument to use, but it's one that is tied up with Wagner, who many people in the know of classical music understand that Wagner is a problematic figure in music history, despite the incredible achievements that he made in harmony and music theory and the scale of opera. He was not the good guy, so to speak, in many of his interactions with musicians and the people of his day. Would you like to talk a little bit more about that?
Yeah, absolutely. So he was notoriously anti-Semitic, and after his death, when the Nazi Party and fascist nationalism was a rise in Germany, they used his music as a propaganda tool. And of course, the outcome of the Nazi regime was the murder of 10 million people in concentration camps. It's dark, but it's real, and we have to keep remembering that it happened. So one of the things that we try to do is uplift composers from demographics that Wagner would not have been happy about, and we like kind of just being a little bit cheekily subversive in how we decide to be creative and have a good time with this instrument. So the first piece you heard was written by one of Leander's students, and we've commissioned works from many friends. And I were at the University of Wisconsin-Madison together, and I just always thought his compositions were beautiful. And he'll tell you the story of how this particular commission came about. But we wanted a composer to sort of grapple specifically with the idea of Wagner for one of the pieces on the album, which then has become the title track. And I can just show you really quickly because I think the album is really beautiful. This is our limited edition vinyl, and the actual vinyl itself is a really cool splash color vinyl. So with that, I'll let you maybe talk to Elliot a little bit about his composition.
That'd be great. And I'll remind people that if you can check in the description of this live stream of this video, you can both purchase the album on Bandcamp. There's a link to do that on Bandcamp, and there's also a link to if you're feeling generous and you're feeling like you'd like to donate and support the work of the LGBT Quintet. Then there's a link to do that as well. But now here we have Elliot Goldkind. So you're one of the composers on the album. And I think before we get too far into our conversation, I would love to play a little bit of your piece, Do You See, Do You Not See? And particularly what I would like to point out as we get this piece set up is that, again, this is another fantastic work, but it's going to show off not only the Wagner tuba in a very specific light, but people will hear immediately that there's something else going on with this ensemble outside of their ability to just play the tuba. So without spoiling too much, we're going to go ahead and play the last minute or so of your piece, Do You Not See? Excellent. Wow. So it's so cool to get to listen to something like this, because it's if you don't mind me saying, it's a little bit weird. It's a little bit weird to hear both the Wagner tuba and, of course, the singing that's going on in this piece. So I would love to hear your thoughts about how you decided to write this piece, which is in direct conversation with Tristan and Isolde, which is Wagner's preeminent opera. We could talk a little bit more about why that opera is so important, but also like how you write a piece for a group like this specific group.
So much lots of questions there, and I wonder if I have answers. I just want to say that, the way that this started is not something profoundly rooted in music or music history or Wagner. It was me wanting to write something, and I just reached out on Facebook and said, "Hey, anybody want me to write something for you?" Composers out there know that this is a big part of our world. Is like, hey, does anybody want something from me? And Lydia, who mentioned earlier, we know each other from Madison, Wisconsin, when I started grad school the first time around. Lydia answered, and that's how this thing began, and that's how I found out about this ensemble. And so it was on, but had Lydia said, "Oh, now I'm in an octet for 8 ocarinas," I would have been happy to write that too. But the Wagner tuba was really cool to me. I'm not a super opera buff. I'm not a Wagner scholar, but I've been to enough, and I really, really have feelings about the Liebestod and about Tristan and about Wagner. And when I found out about this project, I just thought it was so cool, and I was so excited. I mentioned this to them, to the whole group yesterday, that it wasn't like we're an LGBTQ group only. And I love this mission statement. It's like, if you are a member of that group, or if you know somebody who is, or would like to know somebody who is, I'm a New York City kid who grew up in the 70s. This is not like, oh, let me branch out, and but still, it was just such a very inclusive, lovely sort of mission statement or definition of the group. And frankly, I already had, just the utmost respect for Lydia anyway, from decades ago. And so when it was this Wagner thing, Wagner is sort of like, as you mentioned earlier, Scott, like Wagner's sort of the guy, I mean, he's this giant. He's, on par in one could argue with Beethoven in terms of being this, patriarchal and masterful man, composer guy.
Yeah.
And here was this group, queering Wagner, and I just thought, oh, I love it. And to say that Wagner was problematic is something we understand.
Yeah, a little bit.
Yeah,
a little bit.
The name of my piece, I know it's a goofy pun, but it's, do you see, do you not see?
Yes.
And I just thought that was, my take on this Liebestod. And I studied in grad school. I read Adorno's book on Wagner. I hope it's okay to mention Adorno.
Of course, yeah.
Well, we'll see how the viewers feel about that. I mean, but this book was so interesting because, Adorno, in his very Germanic philosophical way, condemns Wagner and really criticizes him and the phantasmagoria, this sort of illusion that Wagner puts forward. But as my really smart professor pointed out, you can't help but realize that despite the sort of philosophical, intellectual criticisms of Wagner and his work, he loves this music.
Yeah.
I mean, this is gorgeous music.
I mean, and that really gets at the heart of what I think people have with the musical component of Wagner's output, right? Is that the Liebestod, the first opening of Tristan and Isolde, it is a radical way to start a piece of music. It really, it is factual to say that Tristan chord, which is really more of a chord progression, but I digress. That Tristan chord really did like open the floodgates and change harmony for hundreds of years after that thing was. So you can't like extract this musical importance in the abstract. It is not possible to sort of like in either like any piece that talks about Wagner. It's impossible to say, well, we're only going to talk about the musical part of Wagner and we'll leave everything else behind. It's also impossible to, in some ways, I think, unilaterally condemn Wagner and ignore his music entirely, because whether it's cultural, whether it's compositional, whether it's whatever resonance that we have with Wagner's music, we do find it beautiful at the end of the day. It's part of our cultural consciousness. I mean, the Ride of the Valkyries as well is one of the most famous pieces of music that any layman would know, whether it's from, Looney Tunes or dozens of movie scores and trailers over the time.
Commercials.
Yeah, exactly. It's really embedded into our culture, and so I think what I particularly appreciate about some recent trends, but this trend in your piece and the trend in the quintet overall is to engage with that dichotomy directly, to say that there is this element that we find appealing about Wagner's music and this element we find unappealing about his character, and instead of separating them, we should talk about it as a whole. So what I want to ask you also about is, you talk about the Wagner tube as a metaphor for all these things, but I am curious, as a composer, like functionally, what does the Wagner tuba do to your compositional process? Like, what did you have to learn about this instrument in order to write for it?
I wish the answer was, well, I had to embark on a very, very long and, elaborate odyssey, but I didn't really. I asked around. I was basically told, treat it like you would treat writing for a horn, and if you mess up or go too far astray, we will let you know. To this day, I haven't heard any gripes from anybody in this ensemble. So, and the I like trying to do some interesting things, but I'm not a composer that's like, let me throw in all the tricks and let me do all the extended techniques and all that. But I have put voice into a fair amount of my works. I mean, the voice is so intimate, it's so immediate, and I'll tell you, especially in the context of this beautiful recording, in this beautiful space, especially with what I'm trying to convey in this particular piece, I dare say it's really effective. But to write for the instrument itself, I mean, I listened to it, I listened to recordings, I did a little bit of, research. I've written enough for the horn, just the regular, if I may call it the regular,
the regular horn, right? Yes.
Yeah, the horn.
The horn.
So I don't think that was too difficult. And like I said, I was just, when I heard the recording, I'm like, oh, it's similar, but it's different. But your first question about trying to be, how do I treat this? It's as you said, and if anybody, please listen to the piece. I mean, it's definitely all about the Liebestod, and it's not just musically about the Liebestod. There's lots of quotations of the melodies from the Liebestod and of the Tristan chord and all of that. But it's also, I was always so struck from the first time I heard it of Isolde saying to the breaking the fourth wall as she's laying over her dead lover's body. Do you see? Do you not see? She's saying, like, do you smell his sweet perfume? She's so transcending, her existence, and to the point where she literally dies.
Yeah.
And I just thought that the voice is so powerful, and as a fitting in with this project, fitting in with this idea of like, here's a group who identifies with and as outsiders, and also trying to see if anybody hears them. Do you hear? Do you see? I mean, I can't speak for the group. Well, I can't. Period. But I think this group is just trying to make art, and they're just trying to do so in the most humane way possible. And I think that the voice in this thing, do I alone hear this melody? Is this melody nothing but just beauty, and decency? And so I'm hoping that, sorry, I'm getting a little grandiose and worked up here, but I'm just trying to use this thing by this composer who's seen in a totally other way to identify or to provide the possibility of identification with anybody listening. Do I alone hear this melody? Well, no, I hear it too. Maybe you hear it too, So it's sort of an entanglement of this voice speaking to a listener, as well as these quotations of this beautiful piece that can conjure up any number of emotions from people already familiar with it.
Yeah, I find that line at the end of Tristan, do you see do you hear what's going on? It's so resonant to how I think many of us feel today, especially in America, in the United States. Like just looking around and saying to people, like, do you understand what's going on? Like, I cannot possibly be the only person who feels that this is crazy. The way you put it yesterday was like, these people just want to live their lives. Like the communities that we're writing for and that are trying to be heard, trying to speak out, they many times they want nothing more than just to exist peacefully. And every reminder we have that this is not normal, the way that things are happening is so important. And your piece, I think, is like, again, it's a cliche to say it's hauntingly beautiful, but that haunting portion of it, of hearing the voice and the ghost of the end of Tristan, like that echo is very powerful, I think, in the mission of the group, and I commend you for being able to pull that off. The last thing I do want to ask about it, and we'll probably talk about it with the rest of the group as well, is, this idea of, did you decide and ask to use the voice, or was that something the group kind of permitted you to do, saying like, oh, by the way, we also sing?
It was my idea, and I was pretty sure that it would be okay. I except for my very first orchestra reading when I was a grad student, the very first time, and people in the audience, people in the orchestra had this sort of like.
As an orchestra player, I've been there. I've been there.
Yeah, but aside from that, I've never had any, if any, I deal in contemporary music with people that play contemporary music, so I was pretty confident it would be fine, and apparently it was.
Yeah, it reminds me, as I said in our conversation yesterday, it reminds me a lot of Helmut Lachenmann's kind of approach to writing for music, which is that very rarely in his pieces does he say he's writing for a cello or a horn, or in this case a Wagner tuba. He says he's writing for a cellist, a hornist, a flautist, things like that. And so it really, his music sort of embodies this idea that there's a human performing the music back there. And I like music that does that really treats the orchestration as a group of people and not necessarily as these instruments that is, if someone can just pick it up and play the notes I have on the page, then that's all I need. It's really designed to be played by a specific group of people. And I think that's why it works so well with a group like this, and their performance of it is exceptional. I can't wait for people to hear the whole piece. Well, thank you so much, Elliot, for chatting to me about your work. Again, congratulations on such an exceptional work. You said yourself yesterday that you felt like this was a really strong piece in your repertoire, and it certainly makes me excited to learn more about the music that you've written in the past as well.
Well, thank you, Scott. To clarify, I said I was feeling quite good about this piece, but I don't feel necessarily that way about all the things I've written in the past. But this one, I'm really pleased with it as a composition, and I'm really pleased with it as a performance and a recording.
Great.
So I thank you all. It's I'm really lucky to have gotten to know and be a part of all of this, and with all of you.
Great, excellent. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. All right. Well, moving on, before we get too far into this, another reminder to people that we are here supporting the LGBT quintet, the Lawrence graduate Bayreuth Tuben Quintet, on the release of their second album, Do You See, Do You Not See? We just ended a conversation with the composer of that work, Elliot Goldkind. If you want to purchase the album, you can do so at the link below. And see it, at Bandcamp. You can purchase the album, and you can also, if you're feeling generous and you would like to just support the ensemble generally, there's a link to donate as well to this nonprofit Tuben ensemble. But I'm here now with Leander, and Leander, just you introduced yourself at the beginning, but it has been a while. Would you love to reintroduce yourself and tell people what you're all about?
Sure thing. My name is Leander Starr, and I've been playing with the LGBTQ since about 2020, and I also helped make a couple of the arrangements in this particular album. And if you are a fan already of the LGBTQ Q, you might be interested to know that I also designed the cover for the first
Oh wow! Oh
album.
great. So you're really you're a multi-talented artist musician. You can perform, you can do graphic design, you can arrange. That's really exceptional, and you've clearly done them all well. So we are going to listen now to a little bit of another track on this album, which I'm going to play it before we talk too much about it. But
Great.
this is in memory of Victor Jowers, which is a Lou Harrison track that has been arranged for this ensemble. So I'm going to play the first minute or so of this track, and then we can talk about the music and sort of what you guys envision as your creative goals of this ensemble. Great. I'm going to go ahead and get everything set up, and then we should be good to go. Great. Excellent. So a little bit of a taste of that work. But talk to me a little bit about this piece and this arrangement and why it's included on this album.
Sure. Yeah. So I made this arrangement a while back. This group is always looking for ways to highlight queer histories in classical music. One of the problems with our communities, just generally LGBTQIA communities, is that sometimes we lack elders or we have trouble finding them, especially in the wake of the AIDS epidemic. There was a real lack of older voices. And I think just generally, in terms of a marginalized group, you don't get raised most of the time by people who are like you, right? You have to find each other, and sometimes we can't always access our histories, or again our elder voices. So something that we do a lot is just like kind of find the queer histories in our quote unquote canon. So that includes sort of like fanficking out like people like Hildegard von Bingen, but also like looking at people like Poulenc that are like definitely queer and in our canon, and then also in our more recent like history, people like John Cage or like Lou Harrison, who wrote this piece we just listened to. I love Lou Harrison's work. He's originally from Portland, as am I, and he's just a very thoughtful, interesting composer, was interested in some cross-cultural ideas, and was a gay man who lived through the AIDS epidemic as well. He was also a music critic in New York at that time. So yeah, I loved this piece. I've always loved it. I think I first encountered it in school in San Francisco, and I just decided to make an arrangement of it, first for myself as a soloist, and then next for the group.
Are you playing the solo Wagner tuba roll at the beginning and throughout the piece?
I'm actually not.
Oh, really?
When we do it on tour, I usually do nab that part, but I actually didn't play it on this particular recording, which is totally fine. I give that.
Well, whoever did play it, they did an excellent job. It's such a beautiful like call and response kind of vibe, for lack of a better word. There's so many. What I love about the it was Lee Cyphers.
It was Lee Cyphers,
Cyphers, what people are saying,
yeah.
played it. What I love about this, the ability to do arrangements and to add them on this album, is for me, it creates this incredible variety of sonorities that end up on your album. It broadens our idea of what classical music is in a really great way. I think that's a very common goal to like sort of find these new sounds that can come into the classical music canon. But the arrangements that you guys have chosen like have really diversified what we think the sound of the Wagner tuba is supposed to be. We normally see it as a very strictly a chorale instrument. It plays as a group of 4 people. You play a chorale in block chords, and then you get out of there because if you hear a Wagner tuba alone, God, think of the horrors that would happen if we heard a Wagner tuba alone. But here it's presented as a soloist, like it is.
Yes.
There's a Wagner tuba solo happening in this arrangement, which is a great way to approach the instrument. I love it.
I think we make a habit out of absolutely destroying expectations for what the Wagner tuba is capable of, and especially our first album, and there's a ton of minimalism. So like minimalism and French horn just generally don't mix, right?
Yeah, you have to breathe somewhere. Like you can't play these things over and over again. Yeah.
Yeah, and if you do something enough times, chances are you're gonna mess it up at least one of those times. But even in this piece, or in this album, the Adam Scott Neal piece is kind of on that minimalism spectrum, which I helped adapt that piece, although there was some sort of organic arranging that happened during the recording session with that one, which is kind of cool.
Great.
Yeah.
So I wanted to touch base on something that you said earlier. It passed us by very quickly, but you said I don't normally nab that part when I'm on tour, right? Which I think there's a question in there, which is like, how do you guys decide who's going to play what in a group of all Wagner tuba ensembles? Do you have principal players? How does this work?
Yeah, we absolutely do not have principal players. We have people who are really good at certain things. So like I think of Lydia Van Driel as being someone who's so good at playing high horn. So sometimes if I'm making an arrangement and I'm writing something really high, I'm really thinking about Lydia, and I'm like, okay, this is going to be Lydia's part. I'm going to make them do this thing, and they're going to rock at it, Or like sometimes, Anne Ellsworth has this real facility in the low register. So if I need to do an insane bass line, I know she can do it, and probably several of the members could probably pull it off, but she can do things that some of us can't really dream of. So yeah, I mean, basically, we choose parts that we know we're going to feel good at and excel at, and it's very egalitarian in that way. We all appreciate each other's strengths.
Yeah, you were mentioning previously that the idea of like a hierarchy in the way that your ensemble works is not the appropriate way to imagine it. And so for people that are tuning in, like the way an orchestra works is very hierarchical. You have a conductor at the top who gives information to generally the principal string players and the principal wind players who give instruments to his section players. And when you join an orchestra, you are assigned a role at your audition, and that is basically your job for as long as you're in the group. So if you're a section player, that's your role, and occasionally you might get to shuffle around depending on the concert, but it's very fleeting. It's very, very structured, very organized. But this chamber ensemble does not work like that at all.
We are very much a collective, very much anti-hierarchical, and it really goes, to your own capacity. So you get to estimate your own capacity at the time, and do what you feel capable of and feel like it would feel the best for you, which is really nice. It's very human, and we have enough people in our sort of collective that not everyone has to come on every tour, and yeah, it's very humane, and I love it. Yeah, more things should be that way.
Yeah, I mean, I agree, and it allows you to write music for the people who you're playing for. I was telling a story in the past. I think some people might know some of my arrangements that I have on my website, and eagle eye viewers will notice that some of the horn parts have names on them instead of numbers, and that's because when I was writing for a group, now mine might not have been more as wholesome as the way that you organize it, but we in this quintet that I arranged a lot of music for when I was in college, we would sometimes like butt heads and fight about who would play the first horn part, who got all the solos. So I just started started naming the parts by the people's names, so that there was no first horn. It was this is Scott's part, this is Luke's part, this is Michael's part, things like that.
Perfect.
But it does. But even then, in those parts, I'm like, well, this is something that Michael can do. This is something that Luke can do, and it sounds like that's the way that you approach your music as well. Like I know the members of my group, I know what they can play, and so when I'm writing, I'm not writing for this abstract concept of a Wagner tuba player. I'm writing for my colleagues.
Yeah. Oh, I love it. Yeah, this is definitely the way I prefer to work as well.
This is something that I think is so funny about like contemporary music, the way it's set up at orchestras. Is we're in the Louisville Orchestra, we have what's called the Creators Core, which the idea is that instead of having a composer in residence like show up once a quarter maybe with a piece already finished, and then you play it and then you never meet them, they live in Louisville and they work in Louisville full time, and it does get to the heart of this problem of contemporary music, which that it's sometimes written by composers or arranged by composers in a room somewhere far away from who's going to be playing it. And then it shows up on your stand as a musician. You don't know what the piece is about. You don't know what to expect when you're reading the piece. And then you play it and you perform it and then you never see it again. And I think this is a really elegant solution that you've come up with, which is groups should be writing music for themselves. They should know their groups and they should write their own tracks.
It's becoming more popular. It seems like in the chamber music world that I've noticed. But yeah, it's such a delight to be able to write for a group that you play with, and to come to that first rehearsal and hear that it works is so exciting. And to have feedback, from the group. I know that the arrangement of the Lou Harrison piece, we perform it almost every time we go out, and the group, it never seems to get tired of it. The audiences really resonate with it, and so that's really gratifying for me.
Great, and we'll talk about your touring a little bit more with our next topic. But I would love to just give you one other opportunity to just say, is there anything else that your group really like when you are thinking about performing music and you're thinking about being on stage and communicating with an audience, what would you say are like the core creative values of the LGBT quintet?
I think we all could give a different answer to this, to be honest, but I would say the core values for me are to present beautiful music that we really believe in and care about, and trust that will resonate with our audiences, and to sort of like be open to almost any mode of music, any sort of era or type of music, as something that can work with our instrument, and then again resonate with the audiences, and in particular highlighting queer composers, people of color, and contemporary and sort of these predecessors that I mentioned before. And it's very free. I'm part of other chamber music ensembles that it's pretty defined, what we play and how we play it and where we play it. And this group is sort of like so exploded open, but it always ends up being remarkably beautiful, because I think we're always trying to do something, again, very human.
Great. I think that's just such a great approach to music. It's, my experience with performing music is very often sitting in the back row of a giant orchestra hall, playing a small part of a big work that many people probably already know, that have heard before, and they're seeing it in the same way it's been presented for 100 years. I'll tell this story because it's one that it's like even my own like creative voice, I always find struggling with it, which is I was performing a concert, and we were doing all Beethoven symphonies. We did like 3 Beethoven symphonies. Nice. And that music's really, really great. But I was just in a moment, this is years ago, where I was kind of like, said to myself, like, isn't this kind of weird that we're doing this? Like, there's hundreds and hundreds of recordings of these symphonies out online. I was like, what do I have as, like, I think I was 19 at the time. I was like, what do I possibly have to add to the repertoire of Beethoven symphonies? And then they're all performed exactly the same way every single time. You sit in a concert hall, you play them, and you play them. And then, and somebody looked at me and they was like, no, Beethoven is important. We have to do it this way. Like performing orchestras is the way it's supposed to be. And I left very unsatisfied with that answer. I was like, I'm not 100% convinced that that this symphony itself is like intrinsically valuable exactly the way that we play it all the time. Like it seems so rigid to be the truth. And there's some orchestras that experiment with other ways to like find it, but I actually think that chamber music is where that freedom and that breaking of the fourth wall almost actually works most effectively.
Do you know, I don't want to take too much time with this, but I want to engage with this thought of yours because and this 19-year-old version of you, because I want to say to him, like, you know, it was important for you guys because you were doing it together and you were doing it live, you know, and like there's so much, it doesn't matter if you did it differently or if you had a unique take. It was that you were humans together making something ultimately very beautiful. And I think sometimes this group is actually an answer to that sort of like difficulty we have with wondering if music is important or interesting. You know, like I think when I joined this group, I was like, oh, we're playing Poulenc. Oh, we're doing, you know, old music. We're doing whatever. And I thought, oh, this is sort of uncreative. But then I realized, like, oh no, we're searching out these like incredible gems of music and art, and not afraid to present them just as like, hey, this is good stuff.
Yeah,
like, you might like this.
Yeah, in many ways, it's actually like it's less about the canon. It's less about the idea that there's this standard repertoire that has to be shared with people. It's the act of performing it together that's the part that is interesting, and the part that makes it meaningful. Like the repertoire itself, like we choose the stuff that we value and we think is really beautiful and really important to share, but it's the sharing itself that is the goal. Like, and I think there's people if you grow up, as they say, like I think hopefully you learn that as you're performing music. But I think there are a lot of musicians out there that don't necessarily make it to that level yet. They're still stuck on the repertoire part of it. They're stuck on these are the old people that have the best pieces that we have to perform because their music needs to be heard, and not the idea that like as an organism we're sharing it as what we value. And I think that's a great way to approach the sort of philosophy of music making.
Well, and like I like flipping it, like, you know, instead of saying like new music has a place in the canon, it's like, well, the canon does have a place in music.
There's,
you know,
we call it old and famous music in Louisville. And that's basically, those are the two things that music can be. It can be either new music, or it can be old music, or it can be famous music, and it can be not so famous music. And so you can do old and not famous music, and you can do new and famous music. You know, Short Ride in a Fast Machine probably reaches that, right?
Yeah.
So that's how we describe it. The canon is actually just the old music that's also famous. So great. Well, it was so much fun talking to you, and we're going to continue our conversation with board members of the LGBT Quintet. As a reminder, you can download and listen to their new album on Bandcamp, and you of course can donate to their great nonprofit and their mission on the link in the description as well. So great. I would love to introduce our next guest on here, which is Maddie. Maddie, it's been a little bit while since you've been on camera, so why don't you go ahead and reintroduce yourself for the group here.
Yeah, hi everyone. My name is Maddie Tarantelli. I'm the horn professor at University of Northern Iowa, and I've been playing with the Tubens since 2023. I first performed with the group in Montreal for IHS 55, and then shortly became president thereafter. Now have transferred that on after my 2-year stint. I did record on this album. It was my first recording project with the group. Did a lot of F Wagner tuba, so a lot of that low stuff.
So just to bring that in, just for people who might not know, there are two Wagner tubas. There's two keys of Wagner tuba. There's like an alto Wagner tuba and a bass Wagner tuba. So you prefer the bigger one. Is that true?
I don't know if I prefer it.
But that's what you play. That's what.
Yeah, and I made a decision or a mistake to buy my own Wagner tuba, and I actually bought a double.
Oh,
because
okay.
I stand in B flat on my horn, and I
Okay,
wanted
good,
something
yeah.
that I could just like immediately go over to and kind of play some of the crazy stuff.
Yeah, the crazy licks in there.
Yeah, so I'll just play whatever is handed to me.
I love it. That's more people I think actually should have that take. There's no such thing as high and low horn players. There are just
Oh, there really isn't.
There's
All
just-
you have to do is play Shasti 5.
That's right. Yeah, if you can play that, then you've got everything you need. Great. Well, we're going to listen to a piece by Poulenc now. We're going to listen to a little bit of this work, which was arranged for the group, and then we'll have a chat about the piece and about identity in classical music. So I'm going to go ahead and get started sharing that, and let's go ahead and listen to the first minute or so of Sol Regina by Francis Poulenc. Great. So this is perhaps something that's a little bit more hey Queen. I love that. This is something that translates to a little bit more people might, if anybody's familiar with the Wagner tuba at all, this is something a little bit closer to what they would expect a group of Wagner tubas to be playing. It's a chorale that is sort of, it's of course it's an old style of music, but maybe the most frequent use of the Wagner tuba is in the later Bruckner symphonies, where they play all these chorales over and over and over again throughout the work. So I would love to just start our conversation a little bit about why this piece by Poulenc, and I think we already brought up that Poulenc was would probably have identified in this LGBT camp this group of people that fit in here. But how does he relate to your group?
Yeah, we've got a straight and narrow sacred chorale in this, and it's like, how do we possibly relate to this? It seems a little opposite. Well, Poulenc himself, he was queer, and he was pretty openly gay amongst his friends, but not necessarily to the public. And he also dealt with this struggle of faith. He kind of had an ABA relationship with Christianity. And it was towards the end of his life where one of his friends was decapitated in a motoring incident, and it caused this huge faith crisis and an eventual return to his Christianity. So this grappling with, so many challenging identities, but the intersection of those identities is something that we can all very much relate to.
Yeah, I think, I won't speak for the entire cis male white community here, but that part of my identity that is cis straight white man, I think that our failing is to imagine those aspects of our character as an identity, because we begin by assuming that is the default mode of interacting with the world, right? So when people, if you've never encountered or thought about classical music or really any music in this way of like how identity works with classical music, I think a big mistake that people that look like me make the mistake of is they assume that it's not important because their identity is so rudimentary to the way that we go through life. But somebody like Poulenc, his sexual identity would have been like he would have been constantly engaging with it, like probably while he was alive. It would have been a big part of who he was. It would have been a constant the way he interacted with the world. As you even said, he kept it private from public life and was kind of open only to his friends, which is that sort of splits your identity in half in some way.
For sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, and to go through the world thinking that there's a default, I think is part of the issue. It's just a matter of putting yourself in other perspectives. And I think that's what this group does really well, is we've got so many different identities and walks of life. And I love the intergenerational aspect of this group. And the music that we arrange, perform, program, it represents so many of those different perspectives, and those are just some of them.
Yeah, it's truly, it is inspiring how many different ways people can identify themselves. Like we're living in a world now where if people have enough introspective, they should and hopefully feel like they're allowed to feel exactly who they are. They can explore exactly who they are and how they work with the world. One of the questions I want to ask you with this conversation about identity in classical music and in your ensemble is, we've referenced it a little bit with Wagner at the start of our conversation, but there's this approach that some people, who maybe aren't I don't want to say on board, but they're learning about this stuff for the first time, and their response to it is sort of like, why can't it just be about the music itself, right? Like, why do we need to know all this stuff? Why do we need to worry about all this stuff about identity? Does it really matter who somebody was if the output of their music is beautiful? And to sort of tie this to our conversation about Wagner, with Wagner we have somebody whose character was relatively abhorrent to modern standards, and honestly to the standards in the 19th century as well, but especially in today. And his music is so beautiful that we want to ignore it. But now we have a composer like Poulenc, who also wrote very beautiful music, and we want to include his identity into how much of his music is. So for one composer, we want to exclude their identity, and one that we want to include their identity. How do we grapple with this idea that can it just be about the music?
Well, I personally think it would be irresponsible to make it just about the music, because there's so much more that goes into it. And if a certain population struggles with something and it doesn't maybe directly affect another population, I think we still need to honor those people's struggle, because that informs everything that they do and create, especially when we're talking about a piece of music. And it can be really easy to say, well, we're just going to make it about the music, or we're just going to make it about the identity. It's about all of it. And we need context. And one of my favorite examples of context is walking into an art gallery. I can't remember the name of the specific artist, but when I was at the Nelson Museum in Kansas City, there was an artistic installation of two light bulbs hanging up, and one was starting to flicker. The other was still shining. And if you don't read the artist's statement, it just looks like a couple of light bulbs hanging. But then you read about it, and it's a representation of the artist and his lover, who has since passed away from AIDS. And that light bulb flickering and then eventually dying out is supposed to represent his life withering away. Mm-hmm. And then suddenly you're crying in front of light bulbs.
Right.
And it completely changes what that piece is about. Now, will every single piece that we look at, listen to, interact with have that kind of weight to it? No. But to kind of operate in this default of, well, I'm just going to take art for art's sake, I think is irresponsible.
Yeah,
at least in my opinion.
Well, I would tend to agree, and I actually think that what many musicians should do is they should actually reflect on how much they really do know about the music that they're performing. I think a great example is with Aaron Copland and American music. Many people do not realize that American Copland was a communist, and some of his greatest works that celebrate the American ideal and that have now come to represent the culture of America and how we interact with what America sounds like, to sort of the phrase that people say. They don't realize that it's in many ways it's underscoring the propaganda that it's used for, if you want to take that stance on it. Again, Aaron Copland was also gay. I mean, people don't, they fail to realize that actually, like, these people that represent our national identity as Americans, like, their personal identity is sometimes counter to everything that we use it for. And I wonder how many people playing Appalachian Spring really respect the irony of performing a work like that. So it is true that, like, you can't really take the music at face value, because if you only listen to Appalachian Spring for the music itself, you fail to understand why Aaron Copland would want to write a piece like it in the first place. Now that's a little bit of a tangent, because I don't think there's any Copland on your album, but I bring that example up as like something that even, it's never, it can't be about just the music, because these, very rarely is there a piece of music that exists like I think the only piece of music I could imagine that would be purely for the sake of making music itself is like a student's counterpoint exercise in college. Like, perhaps that is the most devoid of personal meaning that you can find, right? It's purely an academic exercise.
Well, and a lot of the examples we have been talking about, and even the ones that we record on our album, have a lot of, they address a lot of political challenges. But then you take something like the Brahms Horn Trio, where it's not about politics, maybe if you're talking natural horn versus valved horn. But,
Yeah.
When you understand that he wrote that in response to his mother's death, that third movement hits a lot harder.
Different, yeah.
We just need context, and it doesn't need to be such an act of I'm staking my claim and my camp here. It's like, just see it for what it is in as many different perspectives as you can.
Yeah, I mean, even to borrow a phrase from Aaron Copland himself, which he has a book called How to Listen to Music, he talks about the different layers of deepening your listening of music. And level one is basically every single thing that can be represented on a score. Which I would actually wonder if many musicians themselves ever get beyond level one of understanding of music. Like, that is where these ideas of, did we play the piece right or wrong? Did we do all the markings as they're supposed to be made? Like, that's all level one stuff. And then level two is this sort of like background stuff that we're talking about here, like how your identity intersects with it. And level three is if I remember correctly, it's a little bit like way out there. It's like more like cosmological kind of stuff and relating to history and the whole like sort of tale of music history, which maybe at his time was a little bit. They didn't have the postmodern ideology yet, so it's a different idea of where music was going at the time. But it is fascinating to consider music in this way. That, like, actually it's very hard to imagine a world in which your identity, or even what you're going through when you're writing a piece, what you're going through when you're arranging, what you're going through when you're performing a piece, like, affects the output.
And that's a really good segue for what I want to talk about. What the group is doing in the future is we've performed a piece by Michaela Frank Martin called "Believe," and it was in response to what Kara Kaiser went through at the New York Film and that article. For those who don't know, I would recommend looking into that. But a big part of what we do is contextualize the music that we perform. And we do this with a whole bunch of educational endeavors, not just, scholarly creative performance. And so we've done a whole bunch of tours and master classes. We've played at regional workshops, International Horn Society symposiums. But I would say for me, some of the most meaningful work that we do is when we go on tour and we visit universities, and we expose students to the possibility of put your own group together and perform what you want to do, and you just speak your unique voice and put it out there. So, a big part of, this whole project is, we're attempting to fundraise for upcoming albums, but our next tour is going to be Tennessee. So we're going to be visiting Memphis, Tennessee Tech, and Cookeville, Tennessee, and then Knoxville, Tennessee for IHS Southeast. So we'll be doing master classes. We've done reading sessions with composers too. And, we talk about all this stuff. We talk about the nitty gritty about how to write for these instruments, but it's not just that level one that you're referring to. It's really, we're trying to get into the level two, maybe I'll call it 2.5. I don't know if we're quite at 3 yet.
Yeah. 2.5, 3. The university, I mean, even last week, we're learning about how universities are to undersell it, struggling with trans issues, queer issues, and the like in academia. I mean, it's a serious issue of academic freedom in our country in support of trans students and queer students. And so I think, especially engaging with that at the collegiate level and like showing these people who want to be professional musicians what it's like to be a proudly queer group, inclusive group, and also having the sort of music business aspect of it, of like, not only is this philosophically important, it is thematically important, we are doing good music projects, we are also doing it as a career. This is a legitimate way to have a career as a musician. Like, I think that's something that people should see and should understand is important about your group.
Yeah. Yeah.
Great.
And the act of just being visible is so much of what we do. I mean, what I would have given to see a group like this when I was an undergrad. I didn't even know what a Wagner tuba was when I was in college.
I mean, most of the time, the first time people interact with the Wagner tuba itself is when they're handed one, saying you're playing seventh horn on Rite of Spring, and here's your Wagner tuba. You have to play 5 notes or something, and then
and you have to transpose because the parts didn't.
We
we
never
didn't have
fixed,
a Wagner tuba.
Yeah, we never fixed how to read the parts. We never did all this stuff. We never. It's like it's truly just like a baffling experience the first time you have to use one, and no one ever trains you on how to do it. They just stick your horn mouthpiece in there and figure it out.
Pretty much.
Which is great. Well, is there, in the interest of making sure that we get all of our stuff talked about and we can keep sharing some music from this album, is there anything else you'd like to add to our conversation about identity and what your group is doing?
Well, lastly, we were gifted a lodge in upstate New York in the Adirondack Mountains. And this sounds made up. When I talk to people about my queer Wagner tuba group having a lodge and retreat in upstate New York, it is very real. If you go to the link in the description on this live, you can see the Give Butter donation link, which explains some of what we do with the lodge. But we're hosting what we're calling a parallel play of creative activity and just getting our lodge ready and kind of beautifying it, doing a lot of labor. We painted the exterior, we moved a lot of stumps, and there was a boat involved that we did not expect. But this is something that we're wanting to really build into an institution that we can invite people to embrace their true, genuine selves and feed that into their creative works. And as we've said before, we obviously play the Wagner tuba, but we've sung, and you'll hear that on this album. We've done interpretive improvisational dance at some of our performances. So anything that we raise money for is going to go towards these endeavors for improving the lodge, helping people with travel for the tour, and all of these wonderful things that we're doing. So anything that people can give will really help us actualize this.
Great. It's such an excellent mission. It's such an excellent group. So yeah, please go into the description and find those links to donate and find those links to purchase this great album. Thank you so much, Maddie, for being for being on the channel and chatting for a little bit about what you guys do.
Thank you, Scott.
Great, awesome. And finally, we have Francis Pinkham, which I can't hide any longer that the what's it called? The integrity of this project is compromised because I know you in advance. We've known each other for many, many years because we went to school together back at SMU, Southern Methodist University in Dallas, both in Greg Custis' studio. So it's great to see you, Francis. It's great to have you on the channel.
Great to see you too, Scott. It's been so nice just catching up over the last few weeks as we've been planning this event.
Yeah.
Yeah, God, we were in school together 10 years
10 years ago. Yeah, it really was. I think we
crazy.
graduated. You graduated with your master's, and I graduated with my bachelor's degree 10 years ago this spring, right? Because it would be 2016
Yep,
was when we graduated.
2016.
Which is that's I mean, to think about how much has changed. That's
Truly.
that's yeah, it's crazy. But I'm so like happy to see that you're a part of this group. I mean, this like I having joined this group seems like such a great fit for you. It's just, I mean, even back as when we were in school, we had conversations similar to the ones that we had 10 years later as we're preparing for this. I think we've both sort of had our minds around these issues of how to perform music and what it really means to be an ensemble. But it's great to see you engaging with music this way, and performing it in there. Well, but with that said, we're going to talk about another transcription on the album, which is, if anything can be said is pop music. It's this last track on the album, which is both a song that I posted my version of it on my Instagram already the other day, but it's a Boy Genius track, which is Without You, Without Them. So one of my favorite songs from Boy Genius, and clearly one of the group's favorite songs. So let's listen. We're going to go ahead and just listen to the track, let it play, and then we'll have a chat about it. So let me go ahead and get that started. Sorry, I understand the issue now. Now we will hear it. Great. God, it's such a great song. It's just such a great
So beautiful.
It's so simple too. It's like it's not that complicated of a piece of music. Like, you know, the ABA form, the chords are all block chords. The voice leading is just completely parallel all the way through. It's such a simple piece, but it works so well on just about any instrument, but for some reason, especially on the Wagner tuba. I mean, I played it on horn, but this flavor of mellow brass instrument seems to work really well for this track.
Yeah, I think it does end on a second inversion triad, so that is one like very spicy thing about it.
Well, it's spicy if you're a Haydn and Beethoven enthusiast, but in pop music, I feel like that's actually pretty normal. I remember when I posted my version, somebody complained about the parallel fifths throughout, and then I had to make a video explaining to be like, hey, the idea of parallel fifths is completely arbitrary. It's a rule that's made up for like a specific kind of music in a specific 50-year period and was almost immediately forgotten as soon as the rule was written down. And I think that's something like what we were going to chat about in our conversation about like conservatories and this mindset of like how rigid and structured our taught approach to music is, and how we start to break away from that if we can even.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, well, first of all, I just want to say I love this piece, this arrangement by Connor Parr, another one of our members. For those who aren't familiar with the tune, this is Without You, Without Them by the band Boy Genius. So this is a way for us to kind of elevate queer composers who are alive today in Julian Baker, Phoebe Bridgers, Lucy Dacus. And this song for me too really like hits that intersection of like living queer composers, but the lyrics of the song talk about, thank your father before you, his mother before him, so kind of like tapping into the queer ancestor element as well. But yeah, to your point about kind of breaking the conservatory mold, this is one that when we perform it live, we often sing the tune together first and then perform it on the tubin. And that's something that's very unusual for a conservatory trained instrumentalist, and something that kind of brings us outside of our comfort zone. I came up very serious music schools with CCM and with SMU, and there's a very specific kind of training that you receive at a conservatory in preparing you for the orchestral competitive world of taking auditions and performing at a very high level. By necessity, a very sort of intensive training that needs to go into that so that you can be prepared for the professional world. But what also comes with that is often a very sort of rigid sense of perfectionism. And for me, whether the conservatory world just sort of catered to my innate perfectionism that already existed or exacerbated it, hard to say. By the time I joined the LGBT Quintet, I had stepped away from full-time orchestral performance because I was burned out on that sort of rigid perfectionism and the audition world of, don't miss, right? Don't make any mistakes. That's the only way you'll make it,
Yeah. It's so, I mean, it is, I think people need to understand how specific like you said, it's by necessity. Like this training is so specific to win an orchestra job because the task that is put before you in an audition for winning an orchestra job is so specific. And for whatever reason, like we have decided that that's sort of the we were talking about identity defaults and identity. Like in many ways, the default and identity for a wind and brass player is an orchestral musician. And that, it does take an incredible amount of work to reach a level where you are competitive at international orchestra auditions. Like it does take an incredible amount of training. But what ends up happening is the people who teach you how to do that are the people that are doing it professionally right now. And so they teach you how to do the thing that they've already done. And then it takes so much time to learn that music and to prepare yourself for that kind of a career that we lose the creativity, we lose the opportunity to consider a career that looks a lot like what the LGBT quintet is doing. The idea of like starting a chamber group when you're in college is crazy for a lot of people, because you're thinking about grad school, you're thinking about fellowships, or you have to start paying rent, so you start teaching a lot and you do all these things. Like this experience of having a chamber ensemble that can explore a different way of making music, a different way of creating music, and a different genre of music entirely. I mean, Boy Genius will probably never be on a principal horn audition, but then it begs the question, why not? Like, you know, why? But it's like, why not this? Why not this over, you know, a Mahler symphony chorale in the exact same key? You know, it doesn't. It does. I think it even pokes at this idea that the music that we have. You must have the 7 Beethoven excerpts, right? Your audition needs to have 7 symphonies by Beethoven. But it gets at this idea of like the music that we value and the music that we perform. You know, sometimes we have to open up what music we're going to allow ourselves to perform in order to find a more meaningful place. Otherwise, we're just picking new sonatas, new quintets, and things like that, and going on from there.
Right, and with something like, you know, this ensemble, one of my favorite stories that I love to share about this group is the very first time I played with them. You know, I had moved all the way to Oregon. I was starting a master's in musicology, kind of looking into a career pivot away from like full-time performance, but I was still playing. And Lydia invited me to be a part of this group. And, you know, I was very excited to join. Oh my gosh, a Wagner Tuba Quintet. That sounds crazy. And we performed at a couple of schools up in the Pacific Northwest in Portland and Seattle. And, you know, I was very serious coming into this. I had practiced my parts so hard. I was like, I have to nail this. Like, this is my first impression with this group. And I came into the first rehearsal, and Ann Ellsworth was there. And we were going to perform a duo arrangement of Adam Scott Neal's Shoulder to Shoulder. So only 2 of us would be performing that. And Anne said, "Oh, are we going to do the thing while they perform it?" And everyone's like, yeah, we'll do the thing. And it was like, cool, yeah,
cool.
totally.
What's the thing?
What's the thing? The thing was interpretive dance with the Wagner tuba as a prop on a stage in front of an audience in public. This was something that, for me, you know, I'm a classically trained French horn player. I could do that all day. I have never taken a single dance lesson in my life at this point, you know. So I wanted to roll with the group, but, you know, I just had to like, yes, and roll with it. And it was so freeing. I was just in my body, just making something up. There was no way to be bad because there was really no way to be good, you know? And it was the first time I had really been so embodied in a performance. So I think what I took away from that was like, give yourself permission, right? Give yourself permission to sing, to dance, to perform your instrument, you know, however you can. You don't need anyone to give that to you. Like, as a human, you have that within you. You are a born dancer. You're a born singer. You are born a musician. And that's something that this group has really unlocked for me that I have appreciated.
Yeah, it is so funny how, like, I think people just tend to forget that the idea that you can be right or wrong is that is already a presumption at the very start of whatever you're doing. I wonder how many musicians who are not necessarily like classically trained musicians really think of it in terms of right or wrong. Like there's so much more like a jazz improviser, right? Like you miss the change, but then you keep playing the solo. There's no there's no way to stop. You can't. How can you play something right or wrong because you don't know what you're going to play before you even start doing it? There's something about the way that we approach music, that like having it written down, reading off of it, and replicating it, that like trains us, I think, to that trains us to imagine music this way of like, I have to do what is, I'm replicating a sheet of music. And so when you throw that out the window completely, I like the way they said it. It can't be bad because it can't be good. Like the act of being earnest is the part of it that people resonate with. That's what people are worried about, is the earnestness. They're not worried about anything else that's really happening. And I wonder if this is your experience too, but I actually think the earnestness is what audiences are trying to engage with. Like that's what they want from a concert, is not technical perfection. They want earnest performance.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think, we telegraph to an audience the energy that we're bringing to our instruments, and you can have a transcendent performance of a Mahler symphony. You can have a, a super effective, one person show. But what makes it transcendent, I think, yeah, is that energy, that musicianship, that passion that we bring to it. So yeah, I have just being in this group has been such a privilege for me, and I'm still grappling with my sense of perfectionism and my feeling like I can't possibly bring something to the public unless it is perfectly flawless, like
Yes.
polished and like ready to go. But this is helping me kind of tap into more of an actual like generative, creative energy that I am then taking and bringing more into my orchestral playing as well. Every time I come away from an experience with this group, it infuses all of my performance. Even with the orchestras I play with, we're doing a traditional Beethoven symphony. I'm still bringing that like passion, that joy, that authenticity that the LGBT Tuben Quintet has.
Yeah, I've always told the joke that like somebody will ask how, like, what's it like to play under that pressure? What's it like to do all this stuff? And my answer has been like, well, I've already missed every note on the horn. So like I'm not going to be surprised if I miss it again because I've already done it before. Like if I had never missed a note and then I missed it for the first time, that would be kind of weird. But I know what a cracked high F sharp sounds like. Like I'm not really surprised by that idea. And in many ways, I mean, even people that are going into this sounds like wu-wei science. It sounds like it's not pedagogically accurate, but I actually believe that entering a difficult passage in a orchestral excerpt, for example, with the confidence and free performance idea that whatever happens, you're communicating something inside, actually makes you more accurate technically. Like the musicianship aspect of it is the part that creates the technique that you're looking for. The technique doesn't create the musicianship. And people are like, oh yeah, of course that sounds really great, but then how do I stop missing the high notes? And I was like, well, you need to play like you're not going to miss the high notes, and then if you do, you have to be like, well, that's the risk, right? Then and I don't think there's many people that approach music that way. I think they approach it with at first do no harm, right? Like you start from a place of, well, I'm just going to make sure I don't sound bad, and then if I feel cool, I'll do a little bit more. But it sounds like your group works a little bit differently. It works like at first have a creative and engaging idea and experience with the ensemble, and then after that, well, but your music is so technically elevated anyway. I mean, that's a great irony in all of this, which is that y'all's Wagner tuba playing is probably better than anyone's Wagner tuba playing in the world, because you actually do it professionally, and you're in some ways the only people who are trained to do it because you do it in performance.
Well, and it's such an interesting thing too, because first of all, just making that shift, even though it's the same mouthpiece, switching from the horn that I play every day to a Wagner tuba, it just kind of shakes up my mental patterns a little bit
Mhm.
and allows me to be more present with the instrument that I'm holding in my hand because I don't have as many habits with it.
Mhm.
Um, and at the same time, it's such an absurd instrument. You know, you just kind of have to embrace like I'm gonna miss the high notes on the F tuba, you know, like you're gonna miss notes, there's gonna be mistakes, but again, we are bringing first and foremost an artistic product and a feeling and an experience, and we're also just embracing our total humanity on stage as queer people, um, which is something that a lot of times you kind of have to set aside in professional settings, you know, like you just kind of like push that part of your identity off to the side. But with our group, it's front and center, right?
Yeah.
And that allows us to be more like present and embodied in the work that we do.
Yeah, and I think that comes across in this album really well. I bet it comes across like even more so in a live performance with you guys, which is really exceptional. So as we end our conversation and we're sort of wrapping up this experience, which I think has been a really exciting conversation. I think people don't necessarily understand when you're working as a professional musician, at least in my experience working as a professional musician. Like when I've left college, I don't get to have conversations like these nearly as much anymore. But it's really important to constantly engage with these topics and these issues. And it not that my work as a professional orchestra musician is monotonous, but it does. There's always the risk of it becoming so regular, and taking this opportunity to rethink about what it means to be a musician and what else is there out there to use this instrument that we play or this instrument that we don't always play as a tool for expression. I think has been really gratifying just for myself to be a part of this conversation, and yeah, I'm really grateful for getting to do that.
Well, we're so grateful to be here with you today and to share a little bit about what we do. So thanks so much for having us.
Great. So as a reminder for everybody who is watching as we close by, this has been the Lawrence graduate Bayreuth Tuben Quintet. They have a new album, Do You See, Do You Not See, which I believe is out today. You can download the album, you can listen to the full tracks of everything we listened to and more. It is available on Bandcamp. You can also donate to the ensemble to help them with their 2026 tour and the other projects that they're doing in the future. And this is a great group to follow. They're doing great things, both in for the queer community, for the horn community, for the music community at large. And at the core of all of it, the music is really good. I cannot understate how good these recordings sound and how great these pieces are. So I think everybody should give it a listen and should be following this group because y'all are exceptional. All right. Well, thank you so much for watching. And I will be in touch with everybody about what I'm doing in the future soon. I might not be on my channel much through the holidays, but back in 2026, I am so excited to share with my audience more music, hopefully more conversations like this one with people that are working professionally and doing really cool and great things in classical music. So with that said, thank you guys so much for watching. And then if there's anything that y'all would love to add as a salutation for your ensemble, that would be great. Awesome. Well,
Thank you so much.
Thank
for
you
having
all.
us.
Thank you, Scott.
great. Thank you guys so much. And tune in for more from Scott Leisure Horn and the LGBT Quintet. Thank you guys.
Thanks, Scott.